Welcome to the inaugural episode of Well-Rounded, a Duke Hospital Medicine podcast. So this is something I've been thinking about I want to talk a little bit about the podcast at the very beginning, just because since this will be our first episode. I've been thinking about doing this for a while. I wanted to create a space in hospital medicine for our group to just talk. And joining with me today is Dr. Noelle Ivy, a colleague within Duke Hospital Medicine. It was your well-being interviews, right, Noelle?
Right. That's
That's
how I entered into this space with you, Derek.
Yes. So that was a source of inspiration for this. And I've loved making podcasts for years now. And it's just a fun time where you get to, I've done this with my friends and with the guests before, and just getting a chance to sit down and talk and getting to know people and getting to share that is so fun. So the idea is simple. For each episode, we'll sit down with someone within our hospital medicine group to get to know them a little bit better, their path into medicine, what keeps them going, what they care about outside the hospital, and maybe a few fun questions along the way. Hospital medicine can be busy, stressful, and sometimes isolating, even when we're surrounded by our colleagues every day. And my hope is that this podcast can help us build more connections, strengthen our community, and just have some good conversations along the way. So thanks for listening, and let's get started. Joining me tonight is Dr. Parsa Ghasem. I have the honor of calling Parsa a friend, in addition to a colleague in hospital medicine at Duke University Hospital in Durham, North Carolina. He's an assistant professor here at Duke and a phenomenal teaching physician and clinician. He's also an experienced nocturnist and an expert in the lifestyle that entails. He's a cat owner. He's a video game player, and he is the inaugural guest on Well-Rounded, which I'm sure is soon to be his most treasured honorific. Parsa, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited. Hopefully I don't blow it.
Well, I'm sure it is going to be an excellent first episode. So to set the tone a little bit here, I wanted to tell a little bit of story for the listener about Parsa here. So just to kind of get an idea of who Parsa is and the kind of person and the personality that he brings to the table. I was rounding on my teaching team with my residents and my medical students, and I had a patient who had an ophthalmology consult. And I was one of the ophthalmology interns who had just started a few months ago. And I had never met this person in my life. And they were giving me their recommendations on the wards. And then she said, "Do you know Parsa?" And I said, "Yes, I know Parsa quite well." And she said, my class is obsessed with him. We think he is the funniest person ever. We are obsessed with him." And I said, "Okay, I'll let him know that." Do you have comments on that part?
Think this came about from like when you're doing like many admissions overnight, and like if a patient with an eye problem comes in late, and it's at 5:30 in the morning, and you just kind of want to knock it out for like. Ophthalmology will come in, they'll write their hieroglyphics note that nobody can read, and they'll ask you to prescribe like 8-10 to like eye drops. So after like failing to do it correctly like twice, my favorite rephrase to them is like, "I will do whatever you want for the patient, but you must write for the eye drops yourself." Like if you tell me to do it, I'll mess it up. And I think they just loved that. Like now they like I haven't even met some of these people. They're like, "Oh, you're the guy who wants us to write the eye drops." I'm like, "Yes, I am that guy. Please don't make me write for the eye." Because it's just like 3 drops in one eye at noon with your, like left sock behind your head. And you're like, it makes no sense to me what they want. But clearly there's medical sense behind it. But I think that they really appreciate that. I kind of like, I have no I understand my role in that patient's care, which is just to kind of like help move the patient through the system. And it's nothing really medical wise. And I think they really get a kick out of that.
Yeah, I always appreciate your candor. I actually think about you a lot when I call consultants, because I'm like, what do I actually want here? And just like, I don't need to play a gamesmanship, here. I'll tell consultants, if you just see the patient and come and say that there's nothing to be done here, that's fine. I'll tell them that all the time.
And I think they just like, I think they appreciate, like, I was like, you guys have probably have like many friends also who are like subspecialists. And like, when I talk to them outside of work and I tell them that like, this is how I like interact with them, they're like, "Oh my God, thank you. Just like, tell us what you want." Like, if what you need is a note in the chart that says nothing to do, then we're happy to do that. And it's like, and for better or for worse, that's the system that we exist in. And sometimes like we need a note in the chart saying that there's nothing to do from a cardiac perspective, or that, like this person doesn't need this procedure. And like, I know that, but like, I don't get to be the final arbiter of that call. And I think they really appreciate it when I'm like, no, I've done like a thorough chart review and I feel strongly about this. Like, I just need you to quick, like, touch base and leave, get out. Please don't stay on board for 7 days for me to read your note that says nothing.
This is good. This is good. This is the kind of discussions I want to get into here shortly. So I've got a million things to get through here, because Parsa can speak for the listener. I sent him this massive list of questions. I was so excited. It's like 50 questions, and I was like, pick which ones that you think are going to be fun. So I want to get to some of these. But before we do that, Parsa, tell us a little bit about yourself for those listening to the first time that have never met you or talked to you at length. Tell us
Yeah.
where you grew up, where you're from.
I grew up in a small town north of Colorado Springs called Monument, Colorado. When I was growing up, the population was like maybe 10,000 people, maybe a little less than that. But paradoxically, the high school that I went to was like, I had a huge catchment area. So the high school classes were out of control. It was like 500, 600 students per class. But the town I lived in itself was like small. So it was kind of like a fun, like, time to grow up in that town. Your classes were huge and you felt like you were getting a not necessarily like a big city experience, but like a you weren't getting like a, small town experience. But if you in your day-to-day life, there was like one ice cream store that, everybody went to, and that was it. I loved growing up in small town America. I loved growing up there in Colorado. I think it like really fostered like a love of the outdoors. I went to University of Colorado at Boulder, and I have been a long-suffering Colorado Buffalo fan. We can't seem to make it stick, regardless of whoever the head coach is.
The coach. I wouldn't know anything about that being a UNC undergrad, but
I loved school there. I mean, we can get in some of that later. I have like many like fond memories that kind of shaped who I was as a person there. And I did med school in Colorado at Anschutz, and I was gonna live and die in Colorado. Frankly, like I told my advisor, and I had a preceptor who, largely not told me, but encouraged me to go into hospital medicine. And the best thing he ever did for me was to look me in the eye and say, you should really get out and try something else. And I'd say, no, I'm gonna stay here. And I think he emailed the program director. I can't know this for sure, but I suspect he emailed the program director and said, don't rank this guy. I wanted to go someplace else.
That's what he told you.
That's what he told me anyway. Yeah. That's how I wound up at the University of Michigan. And like, I met my wife there while she was finishing up her PhD. And by complete happenstance, we wound up down here. We just said that like we had friends and family who had previously lived down here, and they said they loved it. And we figured we were young and we didn't have, thankfully, any other tethers. So we figured we'd give it a shot. We kind of arrived down here, and we've loved living down here since. We've since bought a house, so I have no intention of leaving anytime soon. For a guy who, 10 years ago said I was going to live and die in Colorado, I find it a little ironic that I'm very comfortable and probably won't be moving back anytime soon.
Well, we are glad to have you. That's for sure. So did you have a North Carolina connection from Michigan, or you just were like kind of looking
We
in the
have,
area?
I have like there's like a surrogate set of parents is the wrong way of describing it. We call them aunt and uncle, but they're not like biologically related to us. They like functionally like had a huge hand in like raising my brother and I growing up in Colorado, and they had moved back to the North Carolina area, to like the Raleigh-Durham area when I was an undergrad, and we came out a few times to visit them. And I remember like, being like very impressed by like how easy the living was and how easy driving was and getting around. Because even in the like later years of my living in Colorado, before it was like totally California, it was still getting like busier and busier and busier, and driving was becoming more painful. So whenever we come down here and you could get from point A to point B in 20 minutes in the middle of the day, no traffic, we were like, wow, this is really great. But no, beyond that, like I knew nothing about like Duke or UNC or anything like that. I was kind of just hey, there are jobs for biomedical people down here, and there's like a lot of options in case something doesn't work out. And here we sit. In fact, it's funny because I applied to Duke like 3 times over the course of my life. Once for undergrad, once for med school, and once for residency. And all 3 times, I don't think they even reviewed my application. Like I just didn't like, I didn't even hear back. Like, it wasn't even a no. I just got ghosted. So I like to hang that over Amy's head Dr. Zoss's head whenever I see her. I'm just like,
You
I teach your
finally made the right choice.
I teach your residents now. I'm not I'm not bitter about it at all.
What are you gonna do about it?
I mean, they could fire me, so I probably should watch it. But
That's awesome.
we reflect on that often, like how it was like really random how we wound up down here and how happy we are down here. But no, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. Like a lot of people like move to be close to parents and things like that. And we don't have any of that down here.
Yeah. No, when I did residency, I didn't know anybody in Indiana, and I would have stayed there probably if I had any family close by. I loved it so much, like in a completely different area when I grew up. All right. Well, I want to get into a rapid fire round because I'm very excited to try out different segments on you as my first podcast guest. All right. So I gave you some of these questions ahead of time, but these questions, I want a quick answer, no extrapolation. Here we go. What emoji do you want to see added to secure chat most?
I think the face palm is the PC answer because it communicates a point, but like politely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Offline, I told you what I really want added, but I don't want that. I don't want that recorded.
You don't want
my
that
name
out.
attached to that.
You don't want
So
that in the ether.
if
Gotcha.
you know me, you can text me after the fact. All right.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, for the listeners of this podcast, yeah, if you want to text Parsa what you think your guess is to the non-PC emoji, you can text him that. What is your mini mixtape? What songs are you jamming to you think describe you?
I listen to on a daily basis. It's a really eclectic mix of like things like Mumford and Sons, like "Awake My Soul," like anything that's like Vance Joy, like kind of like soulful. And then in the same day, I'll listen to Fall Out Boy, like Sugar We're Going Down, like Grand Theft, like just and like Paramore. It's like I don't want to explain to somebody what goes through my head when I'm like listening to all of that in one day because I don't know, but it's a pretty crazy mix of like really soulful, folksy, and anything emo, which like still speaks to my soul.
We have pretty similar music taste. I don't think I realized that prior to this. But yeah, I've been on a big time emo kick recently. What would you be doing for a career if you weren't in medicine?
Easy. I would teach high school chemistry.
High school chemistry,
Yeah,
Walter White style.
I had a wonderful high school chemistry teacher who I think kind of like found out that I was smart and I could do a lot, and she really pushed me and like encouraged me to do better in science and focus hard and like gave me extra work to do. It was I think the first time that like things really started to like click for me as a student and really made sense, and I think um more than the subject matter, I kind of like fell in love with the idea of like giving that to like young learners, and high school students are kind of fun. Like I mean they can they've got their own idiosyncrasies, but like it's you kind of like molding like a young person, so that appeals to me.
Cool. What is a small thing? So Parsa is an experienced nocturnist for our listeners. What's a small thing that makes a night shift better?
An RRT that goes well, and that can be like defined as like a lot of different things. It can be an RRT that doesn't need to be an RRT that then transitions to comfort care instead of goes to the ICU. It can be a fix the shock. It can be you like prevented somebody from like needing to be intubated. Like it's I think rapid responses affords us as hospitalists like a an opportunity to flex a muscle that we otherwise don't get to, which is kind of like addressing an issue like really acutely. And that for me, like when in a crazy night shift, when you're like dealing with like 30 plus admission requests and things like that, like you have that like one thing you're like, okay, like I helped this person
It made a
with this,
difference.
it would make a difference. Like I made a difference. I can go through the rest of the shift and it doesn't matter if it was like a just complete, I mean, crap show. Like that one thing kind of like will carry you through.
That is way better than my answer of like a turkey burger or something like that. That is such a more thoughtful answer. Incredible. This is why I have Parsa on the show, everybody. Parsa, what video games you playing right now? It's a selfish question for me.
No, it's okay. So right now we're my friends and I are actually playing the new WoW expansion.
Ooh. You guys play WoW Hardcore, or you play
No, 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 no.
that's
We
like
get
the new one?
together we get together at the beginning of every expansion and play the first, like, month or 2 before, calling it quits and moving on to other things. But it's kind of like a fun opportunity to, like, just reconnect with, like, these people and, like, hang out with them and see how they're doing. Because then otherwise I was like, we don't like talk. But we've been enjoying I think, like, Blizzard has had its ups and downs over the years, and this is one of their ups. Yeah, but before, when I was out on FMLA, and we'll probably get there, I was playing a lot of video games because I really couldn't do much else.
Yeah, games is a social connection nowadays on Discord and stuff. Is I mean, that's how I keep up with my friends around the country, and we do stuff together without seeing each other in person for sure. What is your perfect day?
Sleep in, which doesn't happen much because the cats will get me up pretty much religiously at like 6 in the morning. Sleep in, exercise, like do some kind of, bike, like walk outside something, game a little bit, read a little bit, like cook a little bit with Jess, go do some kind of errand for the house. And just kind of like live like outside the hospital, like kind of unbothered. Like it doesn't take much to, like fill that cup. I found it's just kind of like just like a nice normal day that like I'm not thinking about the hospital, I think is really kind of what I define as like a perfect day.
Somewhere where you're, spending time with loved ones outside the hospital. It doesn't really matter so much what you're doing, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, just a place to be and like, kind of like relax. And even if you're not like saying all that much, it's just nice to be like present with my wife. It's, as you two both know, it's like when you're on service, like it's kind of this all-consuming thing. So it's nice on the days when you're not, even if you haven't planned an activity, to just like be with that person and like go to the grocery store with them and, think about what you're cooking for the week. And it's those little things I think that I find restorative.
Well, that's a good segue with that contrast. What made you choose hospital medicine as a career?
I had a mentor in med school. So at University of Colorado, when you're a first year med student, they assign you preceptors, which is generally it's somebody who is like an internist or a family medicine doctor. Like the idea was this is the kind of the person who's going to teach you how to do a physical exam and take like the basic elements of a history and mine was a hospitalist. And I had no idea like what a hospitalist was or I I went to med school and I had no idea what kind of doctor I wanted to be, which, like, thinking back, like, probably should have waited a few years to get some sense of what kind of things doctors do. Um, yeah, but, like, working with this guy, it's like he kind of fit the bill of what I thought doctors did. They took care of patients, in the hospital, they talked to them, they got histories, they did exams, they talked to other doctors, they did procedures, and I fell in love with the idea of kind of being like a journeyman and just, like, being able to do a little bit of everything in the hospital, and I think what really sealed the deal for me was, I think I mentioned earlier that, like, if I wasn't a doctor, I'd be, like, a high school teacher, like, um, I realized that, like, hospitalists in the hospital, were the educators, and I think that really, sold me on, this career was knowing that wherever I wound up, like, that is something that I could always do, was to interact with learners of, like, every level across different fields and, like, pass that, like, knowledge along. So I think that part of this job actually is the part of it that appeals to me the most is working with learners and them and, watching them improve. I think that's the reason I stay, and that's the reason why I do what I do.
So that was one of the questions that I had sent you was, is there a mentor that particularly influenced you? Was that the person that you would pick?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that there's like, there was a lot of like formative advice that I got along the way. But I think insofar as like if I had to point the finger at like, one like mentor, it would probably like have been him, like Jonathan Pell. Yeah. And, Noelle's on the call too. And she had like we have now it's like she's a friend now, but like, I met her, she was my teacher. She was a hospitalist also. Kasha, she was a private practice hospitalist. So I got like both both flavors, I guess, like both like a private practice model and like a academic hospice model. And I kind of decided like, okay, both of these kind of rock. So like I could do this.
So
And
that
Tasha
go
and I
ahead.
were in the same residency program in the same residency class, and that's how I knew her, and then came to meet Parsa. I guess in a way through her, right? Like she told me that you were coming, and um, here you are. And then we've gotten together, all three of us since. That's been really fun.
Yeah, Kasha's one of these like truly wonderful people who like, I am guilty of like I will get busy and you like I'll like lose touch with people, but like she will like I don't know if she has it on a timer or if she's just like a much better person than I am. I think it's probably the latter, but she'll like out of the blue, hey, how are you doing? I'm just like, oh my God, I need to text you. Like, I'm so sorry. But like, she's just like she just remembers to check in. Really gives a crap about her students. So I hope to be that kind of educator. I do my best to, check in with some of the students who have, I mean, now they're like fully fledged, like, subspecialists, like some of the first residents I taught on nights. Um, um, but yeah, you see so many that you lose touch.
Parsa, you mentioned that, you were talking about the hospital life balance, and you were mentioning being on FMLA. I know that Parsa you were recently diagnosed with lung cancer and were hospitalized for that. What was that experience like, and what did you take away from it?
Well, I think, we found my cancer like by complete happenstance, like a year and a half before like the diagnosis. I like swallowed a fish bone and they did a CAT scan of my neck looking for the fish bone. And they didn't find the bone, but they found this like little nodule and they followed it, like every, like they should have, like whatever the radiology guidelines are called, I forget, but they were following it along and like, barely changed, barely grew, but finally like my primary care doctor was like, go see somebody. And, I don't want to like spend the whole time talking about it, but like it's like kind of one thing led to the next. And, I wind up with this diagnosis of lung cancer in my lap. So that was kind of a smack in the face. Because we had just gotten married like the month before the biopsy, which was, I'm very grateful that the surgeon did it that way because it was such a slow growing cancer that like we started talking about this like a few months before we got married. And I asked him like, if you want me to deal with this now, I'll deal with it. He's like, no, I want you to go get married and then you can deal with this. Which was really great advice because it turns out getting your right upper lobe removed is not a joke. It's a pretty intense surgery. And I fully recognize that like men are like complete wimps when it comes to pain, but yeah, it was not to sugarcoat it. It was painful, kind of like recovery. And turns out you can't do anything without moving those muscles on the side of your chest. So
I don't know much
that
about anatomy anymore, but I do know
yeah,
that.
but you very quickly you're reminded of, it's like, oh yeah, it
I do
turns
have
out
to
that
move
like
that.
like the basic like movements become painful. And yeah, and it seems like they're satisfied they caught it early. I mean, thankfully, knock on wood, need any chemo or radiation or anything. They just said, we'll see you in a few months for your CT scans, and hopefully that's that. Yeah, it's uh, I think the initial, like, I remember I was sitting in a coffee shop, like, my mom had come down for the biopsy, and I was sitting in the coffee shop with my mom and, furiously, like, looking through my own chart to see if the pathology had come back and, came back as, cancer. And I think I cried. I walked outside and, cried and, and the next, thing that you think of is like you're thinking about your loved ones and like what am I gonna do? Like how are we gonna pay the house off? Like what if like the government goes belly up and she loses her job and like I like and blah 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 blah. So like the logic part of your brain uh tries to take back over in a deeply unhelpful way. Um and I think, in that moment, I probably went through every single like phase of grieving, if you will. And, thankfully, like, when it's tough, like when you're the doctor and you get some like news like that, you're like, well, I've read this crappy book before. And the only thing you can think about is, like
Mhm.
mortality and things like that. And having to take a step back and put yourself back in the patient's shoes and like, trust the doctor on the other end saying like, this is, like, you're going to be fine. Like they're going to, we're going to remove this. We cut it. Like trying to remind yourself of that is really hard. When you're the doctor, or when you're a doctor and, you're trying to force yourself to be a patient. And I think I did all the things that I tell patients not to do. I mean, I think I read every single article on this type of cancer and like, you want to tell your patients not to do those things, but like, that they're going to. So I think that's something that I've removed from my like, list of things that I like counsel. Like I used to say, don't Google anything, talk to me if you have questions. It's more like, I know you're going to go read X, Y, and Z. I
Mhm.
want you to come back and bring those things to me because I think that's like a more constructive relationship because then it doesn't feel like, I've like, they've betrayed my trust or I've been, et cetera. It's like, I know this is going to happen. You're going to read about this. It's going to be scary. Like, let me help you. Um, and I think like beyond pain and like breathing, anything like that, I think the anxiety, is probably the symptom that like, I still have like a heart, like, like I'm like, I found a therapist and like we're, working on meds and things like that. And like things that like I didn't need before, but like, there's only so much post processing that I think that you can do by yourself. And like getting to a space where I knew I needed to do those things was a process. Like I'm only barely 6 months out from the surgery. So it still, like hangs heavy on my head. I'm grateful that I'm back to work and that our work can be so all consuming sometimes because it's those shifts that are nice because I forget that this happened to me. And that's kind of like I don't whether or not you want to call it healthy or not, I think it's helpful for me to have those 10 hours where I'm human again and like that's not the focus of the conversation or anything like that. So I'd like to say that it's like, it's like changed a lot of the way I phrase things with patients, especially when I look at them and I see like, fear and anxiety in their eyes. I think it's really caused me to slow down, and kind of sit with them with that emotion in a way that like I probably was less comfortable doing before all this. Um, which, when you're rounding on 15 patients, you totally have time for that, but, like, it doesn't matter, like, like, that's what they need, and, like, if that's what they need, then I'll leave at 8 p.m. and, like, I'll feel good for it. Yeah, I'm glad to be through it. Definitely kind of a not something that you expected in your mid-30s. Must be my years of chain smoking catching up to me, I suppose.
That's a joke for the.
Yeah, I've never smoked to be clear, in case this winds up on TikTok, I have never smoked in my adult life.
That part's going to be edited out. The one clip we got is my years of chain smoking catching up to me. That's the one piece we got.
So do you think, I'll ask a question here. Do you think that being able to participate in somebody else's healthcare and focus on someone else is helpful for you and your process?
I think for me personally, like the distraction that it provides, and maybe that's the wrong word, but like it's because I'm focused on them and because I think like I mentioned earlier, like I've read everything there is to read about this. I've thought about this more than any normal non-doctor patient would. Like I've thought about this backwards and forwards, and there's no more processing that I can do that is any more helpful for me personally. Like I don't need like, like whatever thought I have explored has like been, so I don't, for me personally, I don't want or need to be thinking about this anymore, but like I will because I'm human and like anxiety is there. But getting to sit with somebody else and focus on them and like have that be like the consuming thing is it's cathartic. It like gives me a space to like be with somebody else and think and focus on them. Um, yeah, so I find it helpful. I will say, to be brutally honest, like I struggle with the patient encounters, like with the if I'm asked to admit or see somebody with a lung cancer. Like I remember I had a full blown panic attack when I got asked to go see a patient who had PEs and a history of lung cancer, and they were like, I was interviewing them, and they were short of breath, and I swear to God, I walked out of that interview and I convinced myself I had a PE and I was short of breath, and I had to like go take 20 minutes to like go just put myself back together. So to be fair to your question, most of the time, yes, Noel, like, but I have those moments where it is like it's hard for me not to put like to mirror myself on top of their situation.
Sure.
And I don't have a, I'm getting there. Like I'll keep exploring because you can't ignore that patient population. Like that's, you can't ignore that patient
Big part of who
population
we
for the rest of
see.
this career. Like you
Yeah.
have to go see them. So if anybody has any, tools for, navigating those encounters in a way that doesn't result in me walking away feeling short of breath, I'm all ears and happy to learn.
Feel free to
Oh,
leave it
no,
in the comments, right?
I
Yeah.
guess my recent experience was that I found myself back in the radiology suite, like, "I know I have something wrong with me, so please explore this now." After I took care of this woman with, a huge breast mass, like, that was it for me. So I think I'm with you. So, there. It's real hard.
I I was particularly some of my practice has changed after talking with you, Parsa. Remember you told me that you in the past you'd been severely undertreating chest pain from chest tubes.
Oh my
Um
God. Yeah. I need to go back in time and just apologize for just how little I was doing. To talk about like real salient ways that like my practice has changed, like if there is organic pain, I don't even care anymore that like this or whatever, I just like I'm like they're not going to get addicted to these medicines. Like I'm going to give them like a short, course on like and I mean, they gave me, plenty of like pain meds to go home with, and I weaned myself off of those drugs in like 2 days after coming home, mostly because I hated the side effects. But like, I got to figure like if I'm like that, like most people like don't want to be, addicted to these things. Most people don't want to be dependent on these things. So if somebody has organic pain, I have no problem like offering them like appropriate like analgesia now. I
yeah.
think that like has changed a lot. And I think it's probably raised some eyebrows, like, when people are like reviewing my cross cover notes in the morning, like, oh, I went ahead and like gave this person, X amount of Dilaudid or X amount of morphine. Like, whereas before, like they would have been like, really? You did that? So yeah, I think that's a major change for the better. And I wish I could go back in time and like apologize for how like, probably under like treating pain I was.
I had a patient last week that had a chest tube in, and for a malignant effusion, and I was like, she was like had never been on any opiates before, and was like, I don't want to take any of those. I'm like, no, you like you need to take some. You're like really tachycardic and
Yeah.
like clearly hurting
Yeah,
you.
exactly. I mean, it's like the thing is like the conversation changes. Like, no, you need to take this.
Yeah.
Like, it's like it's okay. Like, I will make sure that you're safe. Like,
Mm,
I understand your reticence, but you shouldn't have to suffer because of this thing that we've put
yeah.
inside you.
Yeah. I was also really impressed. I mean, when you came back, I think you were back on teaching teams really quickly, and I know you mentioned, you have a passion for teaching, and I had the pleasure of taking over a team from Parsa quite recently, and of course the handoff was immaculate as always. But the learners that were on the team, I was, definitely impressed by like how fondly they spoke of you and how fondly they would frequently mention like I would bring up some kind of pearl or teaching thing, and they were like, yeah, we talked about this with Parsa. Yeah, we talked about this with him, and we brought this up, and you came back to that so quickly. I mean, would you say? And one of the questions I had on here was like, what's the best part of your job? Would you say like working with learners is your best part of your job, or what do you think?
Oh yeah, hands down. I think that the most reward I get like seeing that improvement, like giving them, and because they're so smart, right? Like these are like, these are like highly motivated, like adult learners who like want to get better. So like, it's the easiest population, to educate because it's a bunch of self-motivated people, right? And they want to get better and they're hungry for that feedback. So like nothing like, when I was working on nights, I loved that I got to see them twice so that on nights you get the second year residents and they do like 2 tours for 2 weeks on nights in that year. So you'd see them once at the beginning of the year and they were just, fresh out of being an intern and they were like unsure and you'd work with them, you teach them how to admit patients and how to, think through things independently. And then at the end of the year, they were this person who was like almost ready for independence and probably and sometimes sometimes I wonder if I'm in the right profession because it's like I think I get more kick out of that than I do out of the actual patient care. But nothing comes close to that for me than seeing that improvement in them and like watching them realize that they can do a thing. Like we had this on the same team that I handed off to you, there was this a patient who had like horrible DKA and they were altered and they had belly pain and their blood pressure was all over the place and they didn't need an ICU. They were just sick. And the learner that I had was like unconfident that they could deliver the care that the patient needed, and they were asking, do we move them to an ICU? And I kind of just looked at them and I said, no, I think you can do this. I know you can do this. And they did. They without my help, I didn't say a word about the actual like patient care, and like the patient wasn't altered by the morning, or sugars were immaculate, like the right people had been called, and the blood pressure was, and it's funny, like sometimes I find myself like in an educator role, like less providing like medical advice and more just like the guardrails, and just like saying like, no, I believe that I know that you can do this. And then they're like, oh, okay, if you think I can, then I will. And then they go do it. I think that, to say it again, that's the reason I stay. That's the whole reason I'm here in hospital medicine is for that.
Without going too much detail, I had a life-threatening experience like many years ago, and it definitely affected my thought process about like work-life balance. You mentioned, those days outside the hospital. Do you think this has kind of made you think about your work-life balance and what's important to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely not that, I was, outside of like the first 2 years when I was a nocturnist, that I was like picking up more shifts because I was just out of residency. Not that I was ever like the hospitalist who was like aggressively picking up shifts, but I have, looked at my wife and my loved ones, and I kind of just said, my job is great. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. Like when I'm there, it scratches a lot of itches, and I don't need it to be the thing that defines my life. And I think I have a lot of admiration for the people that devote their entire like heart, body, and soul to this, and like they go on to like have leadership positions, and like do other like amazing things with this, and they do like crazy research projects, and I'm deeply grateful that those people exist. And I think before this happened to me, maybe I thought that was going to be me, and now I'm okay with it not being. And I'm really like at peace with that. I don't feel bad about it or anything like that. I think that recognizing that, this life is short, and that things will get served in front of you that you have to deal with, and you just don't know what's around the corner, really kind of made me like re-examine how much time I spend in each part of my life, and making sure that maybe not necessarily that it's done like equally, but done like in a way that like feels like equitable to me, my loved ones, and everyone kind of in and around my life.
Any advice that you would give to like somebody that's starting in hospital medicine, like if you could go back to talk to yourself, what advice would you give them to try to keep that balance?
I to be clear, I think I struggle with this. It's not something that like I've mastered. I think if I could go back in time, I would probably tell them that this is to be kind to yourself, because it's a work in progress. Like work-life balance is always going to be a work in progress. It's always going to be something that you have to like work at. Just like any meaningful relationship in your life, it's not something that you just press play on. Like, oh, work life balance. I'll go to the gym 3 times a week. Yeah, right, man. You're going to go to the gym maybe once, and kind of just being like, just tell myself like, be kind to yourself in and around like that work life balance. Which is still not the best advice I ever got, in being a doctor, but that's pretty close.
Awesome. Yeah, I think being kind to yourself on that is, especially in today's day, because I feel like we're so aware of the work life balance, question. I don't think there's any, it's. I think there used to be a time when it was not very well publicized, and now it is. And like I do think that there's a lot of people that kind of beat themselves up about that. So that's really good. Okay, a little bit of change of pace, because I do want to get a little bit silly here, and this is profound and meaningful, and now I have to ruin that and change this.
I love it.
Um, I want to I'm very excited to do this, and I know we're short on time, so I want to get to it. Parsa is the classic nocturnist, and he has fielded many thousands of secure chats overnight. And I have a set of secure chats that I want to run by you. I've not given Parsa these ahead of time, by the way. He does not know what to expect from this. And I am going to have Chat GPT compete with Parsa to respond to some of these secure chats. So here's the rules, Parsa. You're a hospitalist on a nocturnal shift. If you can imagine this, you're a hospitalist at a nocturnal shift up on 8277, and you're getting these secure chats. And I want to hear what your response would be, and then I'm going to read what ChatGPT's response would be, and we're going to see how we can compare those two. All right, and thanks to Noelle for contributing most of these, by the way. So, number 1, you get a secure chat that says, "Hi, doc. Vital signs are not showing any withdrawal signs, but everything else is a yes."
Yeah, I mean, for people who aren't watching my face, I just kind of like my mouth I just kind of like inhaled and just, kind of stared off into space. I think to be fair, I would probably send back ... is the first message I would send back. And to
these are all real secure chats, by the way. These are all secure
No, I know.
chats that have
I'm telling you that this
actually been received and been saving.
I would probably send back ... like, first of all, make sure that the actual patient is attached because, that we've been there. And then like probably just ask them like, what do you mean by everything else? Mark. Like, are they anxious? Are they diaphoretic? Are they seizing? Like, are you seeing elephants on the wall? Like, to be honest, like depending on how tired I am or like what phase of the shift is, like I may ask them like, are they seeing elephants on the wall if I know the nurse or something like that. But probably I'd send back ... or like anything else, like what exactly you're talking about.
So I love these ChatGPT responses because it shows scary because it definitely picked up what I was putting down immediately. It gave me a response and then gives me a color commentary after the response, and it gives me a bunch of emojis. So it says, this is the response. Thanks for the update. If vitals are stable and no objective signs of withdrawal, let's continue to monitor for now. Please continue CEWA assessments per protocol. Let me know if the score increases, vitals change, or if the patients develop any concerning symptoms. Otherwise, no new orders at this time. And then it gives the commentary. This is such a classic overnight secure chat message. It's vague and slightly concerning, missing context, and is received at 2:17 in the morning. Which I'm not sure what to make of the banana emojis.
This is like, if I could include like a GIF, it would be like the confused Pikachu face.
Yeah.
Like.
All right, I've got another one. FYI, patient had a BM. No signs of blood I can see. Picture and chart. Smiley face. And then includes a picture of some brown poop.
I think I would just hit that one with a thumbs up and not respond. I just wouldn't even, I wouldn't say anything at all. I would just hit it thumbs up and leave the chat.
You hit the thumbs up emoji on that one?
Yeah.
It says, thank you for the update. Appreciate you checking and documenting. No new orders at this time. Please continue to monitor.
Saying there is no, listen, we have some really, truly amazing, soulful physicians on hospital medicine. There is not one of them who would say, thank you for the update for a brown bee. There's not one of them.
Then it says, every hospitalist eventually reaches the milestone of reviewing poop photos at 3 a.m. on their phone while eating a granola bar. A true rite of passage.
Yeah.
Poop emoji, banana emoji. All right, I got number 3 for you. Hi, doc. FYI, patient's BP... This is a secure chat. Hi, doc. FYI, patient's BP is 85/40 and heart rate is 150. Thanks.
Oh, I think this is probably another mental status on my way, just have lost faith in my
I need to go there.
I just need to go see what's going on. Yeah, I think if that's what I got paged was do they have a mental status? I'm on my way.
This is the most, I think, unrealistic one of them all that it responds, but it says, thanks. That's concerning. Is the patient symptomatic? Please repeat vitals now and assess mental status, urine output, and overall appearance. In the meantime, place patient on continuous monitoring, obtain repeat BP manually, start at a normal. It's taking out the time to text all this stuff. But then it says, I'm reviewing the chart now. We'll come evaluate the patient shortly. Please call me. Then it says, night hospitalist, suddenly very awake. because this is one of those FYIs that's definitely not an FYI with a night hospitalist adrenaline spike. And the true hospitalist translation of FYI here is, this is actively bad and I'm quietly panicking but trying to sound calm.
Yeah, it's fun. Like, when you said that, when you gave me that chat, my heart just like went a little bit faster. Like,
Yeah.
and it's the tragedy is it's buried in like 7 other chats
Yeah.
that you got
Yeah.
in that same
Yeah,
instance.
that same time frame. Yep. This is another one. Patient feels cold, normal temp.
Oh God. To be fair, I would just probably be like, one of the things that drives me batty about secure chat, it's just like, what are the rest of the vitals? What do you mean by they feel cold? Are they shivering? Like, just like any more. I think the polite way of saying is like, thanks, more information. This is probably with ChatGPT. Thank you very much for the update. Please give me some more information. What are the patient's vital signs? Are they shaking? Have you offered them a warm blanket? Like,
Yeah.
there we go. Try that.
No, that's pretty close. Thanks for the update. If vitals otherwise stable and temp normal, okay to provide warm blankets and continue to monitor. No new orders at this time. Let me know if the temp changes or patients developed other symptoms. And then it says, signed by the night hospitalist managing the thermostat of the hospital at 1:52 a.m. Last one. Quote, 2 a.m. secure chat. They're asking when endocrine's coming by.
Just, I think, depending on what's going on, walk away for, just like 10 minutes, don't get written up, and then just come back and be like, thanks for letting me know. Endocrine will be by on morning rounds, probably around 10 to noon.
Says, thanks. Endocrine typically rounds during the day. No overnight plans for endocrine evaluation unless there's an urgent issue. I'll pass along to the day team to follow up in the morning. It says, and the night hospitalist becomes customer service for consulting services. A true overnight classic.
I know that they just have to let us know these things, but like, I wish there was a way that it didn't have to clutter secure chat.
Yeah, the downsides of a instant messaging notification system. So Parsa, we're coming up on time here. I wanted to close out with a few things. You've been very gracious with your time. So a couple of things, what is, let me kind of lump these things together. If you could give a message to Tom Owens or, the heads of Duke Hospital Medicine in particular, or just in general, what some of the greatest challenges in hospital medicine right now, or what message would you pass on?
I think that for me, and I haven't been doing this that long, but I think that the struggle that I see is there is this war between throughput and delivering the care that like we were trained to give. There's this focus on discharge orders at 9 a.m. There's this focus on like throughput. There's this focus on making sure follow-ups are within 7 days, and none of this is data driven, and all of it is like moral injury because it's less time that I have to spend with the patient, their chart, trying to figure out like what it is that's going on with them. I don't mind seeing more patients. That's not what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm happy to see like patients, like as many patients as I can during the day. And I think the thing that I would ask is that like if the census is going to be what the census is, um then I want to focus my effort on doing the doctor things. Like I want to be there with the patient. I want to spend time with their chart, making sure that I understand all their problems because they are complicated and they did come to Duke for a reason and they deserve a fair shake. And, in that summary that I give them when they leave the hospital, like I want like a good comprehensive idea of like what's going on with them. And I just feel like I can't do that with the other drains on my time. And I know that's not helpful to them because that there's like a lot of drains on our time. But I guess, even if it's like the little things, like if they want, discharges and follow-ups and things like that, I wish some of the burden could be lifted off of my plate and displaced elsewhere if possible.
Gotcha. Like ancillary services or technology to support that. Yeah.
Anything, like, yeah. Read my discharge summary and like, AI can generate some discharge instructions for me and, but,
well, we could see we're real close, but
yeah, again, like, it's like, the census is going to be what the census is. And we're there to take care of patients. Uh, I want help, so that I can do the job that I was like trained to do. And I think a lot of us feel that way.
So that's a good segue. What makes hospital medicine worth it for you? Why you keep coming back?
I think, two things. I think that, I talked earlier about teaching, so I won't, go into that again, but like that, that's my first love, is the fact that like you are providing a learner a springboard for the rest of their career, like a solid IM background. Like if they become a surgeon, if they become, it's like you need to, I'll finish with these two, like, anecdotes. Like there were two cardiologists in residency who gave me like really, really good advice. Like one of them, told me like, if you want to, the key to being a good doctor is like to be a good internist, like first. And this guy was like a cardiologist for like 20 years. Uh, so I think that, getting to impart that to learners is something that, it brings me joy and it gives me purpose. Um, and the other part of like me that like, says like, I'm going to be a hospitalist and like will be a hospitalist is the other piece of advice that I got, was from another cardiologist, in residency. And it kind of goes into, your question about like, what do I want administration help with? Um, as a resident, I went too fast, and like I missed some things that I shouldn't have, and like patient like harm occurred because of it. Not to like go into the whole anecdote. Um, and like people can sugarcoat it and say, well, it was your attending's fault, or like like you admitted 9 patients to the hospital that day, and blah 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 blah. And I mean, at the end of the day, I spent the most time with the patient, and I was going too fast. I think hospital medicine for me works the best that it's supposed to when I'm afforded the opportunity to slow down and go through things in like a deliberate manner. And when time is chipped away that I can't then do that, then the field becomes like less rewarding. I think one of the reasons I chose this, like from a physician standpoint, is that you have these incredibly complicated patients, but you also have time to sit and think and reason through some of their problems and call the right people and make sure the right tests are ordered. And I think that we really shine when like we're afforded that opportunity to be deliberate and be meaningful, with our decision making. So I think that, that piece of advice to slow down is what she told me at the end of that service, kind of rings true whenever like I'm struggling with a patient problem, or I'm like waffling about a discharge. I just kind of like reflect on that and say that this is one of the privileges of our job, is that the patient leaves when we say they're ready to leave, and not when the hospital gods or whoever it be says that they're supposed to leave, like only when I press ready to go. So I really appreciate that about this job, and I think that so long as I'm afforded the opportunity to keep doing that, then I will happily stay in this field.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing, Parsa, and thanks so much for being here today. Um, Noelle, any parting thoughts from your standpoint? Any final questions?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that it's inspiring to see people that have been through something hard and come back to work and thrive like you have been, and also to thank you for sharing that hard stuff with us. It's not easy to talk that through, and so thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me. This was fun.
Banger of a first episode. I'm just gonna say it right now.
You might need to edit that out.
I couldn't have. Yeah, yeah, yeah. After I go through, like, oh, this wasn't so great an episode. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna edit this piece out. Actually, no. Thank you so much again for being here, our inaugural guest. And this has been Well Rounded, a Duke Hospital Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Derek Pinkerton, joined tonight by my colleagues, Dr. Noelle Ivy and Parsa Ghasem. Thanks to our Duke Hospital Medicine colleague, Dr. Kevin White, for our intro and outro music. And we hope you'll tune in next time. Thanks so much.